Are you looking for a simple, pretty, and versatile way to store your colored cardstock? Hi, I'm Jess from JessCrafts.com, and I'm here to help you make the most of your crafty supplies and time. So let's take a look. I have my colored cardstock stored in job ticket holders that you can get from office supply stores or Amazon, and they are color-coded, labeled, and put inside of these magazine holders. They're black, so they blend in pretty well with my shelf here, but because they're magazine holders, they will fit in many different types of spaces. So if you have a bookshelf or some other kind of shelving, that's great. They could even be stored on the floor, in a craft cart. You're just going to put them in this sort of smaller container. And I will show you a closer look at how I keep everything stored, organized, and ready to go. Filming might be a little bit tricky and more zoomed in than I'd like because I'm trying to keep the camera on a mount so that it's not too shaky for you. But here is the magazine holder. This is a black metal magazine holder from Target, and I got it because I have a lot of black in my room and I want my supplies to be the main focus, and so the colors really pop off well of black. That would be true of white as well. And it has a spot for you to label. I don't actually put any labels because to me, with them facing out on the bookshelf, it's fairly obvious that this is indeed colored cardstock. But you could, of course, it's nice that it has that feature. Then inside, I have these job ticket holders that store my cardstock. I have two different types at this point, but going forward, I think I'm just going to stick with one of them, and I'll talk a little bit about these two options here. I have these more standard job ticket holders from, you can get them at Staples, Office Depot, Amazon. As far as I can tell, they're kind of all the same thing. And even when I order the ones from Amazon, they usually have Staples printed on them, so I know they're the same exact thing. So heavy duty 9x12 job ticket holder. I actually trim them down. Talk about that in just a second. But I also have these heavy gauge vinyl ones, and I think these are great too. I will say that if you overpack these more standard ones, they definitely can rip. They're not, as heavy duty as the name implies. The back of the heavy duty ones are frosted, which definitely means the color looks a little bit off, especially on the back. And so that might be a deterrent for some people, but it's really only one side. And they are considerably more expensive. So if you have a lot, this might seem like a less economical choice. But I want to talk about other ways that you might store your cardstock in a similar system, but without having to purchase these new these new job ticket holders for each of them. So when I buy paper from Recollections or Park Lane, which is the Michaels and or Joann's set, I like to buy the thick 100-pound or 110-pound, but they come in a big shrink-wrapped plastic. And I then need to put them in something else if I want to store them separated by color as opposed to the mixed packs they come in. However, there's other cardstocks that when you buy them, like the ones from Simon Says Stamp, where they come in a plastic sleeve, and usually you can peel it and there's like a sticky back, and they come labeled with the brand and the name, and you can just cut the top off. And that's how I store them for a while, but it's silly, but there's a part of me that just kind of likes everything to look uniform. So I have switched over to the job ticket holders for everything, but I think this is a great way to store it. I think that while, yes, over time this bag will probably rip, you can always replace it with a job ticket holder if you still have some left and the bag has ripped. Another option that could work that's not the prettiest, but did do the job, I took these gallon-sized Ziploc bags and I cut the zipper top off of them because I used to actually store cardstock in just zipper top bags with the zipper top on them, and then you couldn't close it, but it worked, but it had a lot of extra going on. It wasn't as easy to see the colors and all that. So I cut the tops off and I actually taped it. I kind of folded it over and taped it so it'd be a little bit smaller, a little bit about the size of cardstock. However, as you can see, the cardstock is going to hang out the end and so the tops could get like kind of messed up a little bit. So it's not my preference. It's also, you know, not as pretty. It's not a super big deal. I also don't like that they're floppy. So when I'm trying to put my cardstock back in, it's a little bit tougher, a little more floppy around. None of this is a deal breaker. Please do whatever makes the most sense for you, what's economical, but I'm just kind of showing you some options and then why they're not like 100% my favorite choice and why I've decided to invest. With these job ticket holders, in my specific situation, I have chosen to trim them down. So you could leave them as is, you could put your label here at the top. However, that does not fit on the shelf that I have allotted space for. It just doesn't work for my system. So what I've done is I've cut them down to 11.5 inches, and that pretty much gets the cardstock all the way in so that the tops are protected, and it allows it to fit a little bit better in my particular storage system. So all I do is take out my big swing line guillotine paper trimmer, and I take the open end or the top and I slip that underneath the blade, measure to 11.5, and I'm able to trim it. That step is of course 100% not necessary if you have room for the taller job ticket sleeves. Okay, so in terms of labeling, Recollections, when I buy their cardstock, and a lot of my cardstock is that they don't have names for the colors, but I still like to label that it's from Recollection so that I'm not just guessing, like, hey, it's not my more expensive fancy cardstock, for instance. And I like to put the labels on the top right corner of both sides. So as you can see, this one's not done, but this one is. And this is because that way, when I put it back in my storage system, and I'm flipping through them, this label will be in the right spot. But if I accidentally put it the other way, the label's still in the right spot. So hopefully that makes sense. I want to put my label in the top right-hand corner of both sides. I also want to show you a little bit about how I work with that. I want to show you a little bit about how I do labeling, just because there's some little money-saving things you can do. So I have a Dymo label maker, and mine I plug in because then I don't have to keep changing the batteries. You could of course get rechargeable batteries, but if you are working off of battery all the time, that can certainly add up, and getting a charger, if you're somebody who likes to label things, I would highly recommend that. I turn on my label maker, pick the right tape size based on what I have in there, and then things that I like to consider in terms of how much tape I'm using is I like to do a slightly smaller print size, so as small as you find it comfortable to read. So I have 8, 10, or 12. I'm going to pick 10. I find 8 to be just a little too small personally. And then the other thing that I do to save tape, because a smaller font will save tape, is that instead of typing out one thing, like I have Park Lane here because I want to label some of them as being the Park Lane brand, but instead of typing out Park Lane and printing, I type out as many as I can fit before it says, okay, there's no more space. And then I print all of that, and it prints a big loop of them. Here I need some labels for my miscellaneous, which is like if I have a bunch of sheets of blue cardstock, but I don't know what brand they are or what color the name they are, and I just kind of put them all together. So I'm typing MISC, so save some room by not spelling it all the way out. But also, then after I type it, 1, 2, 3 spaces, so there's enough room to cut them apart, and then type it again. And I'll keep doing that until I run out of room, and then I'll print them all. So if I go to type this last one, it'll say at a certain point that that's too many characters, and so I'll just go back to the last one. And then instead of printing all the extra, because I'll show you, there's quite a bit on the ends of each one that you're saving. So here we go, almost there. Okay. So now there's, just that little bit of space in between each one. But if I were to print them separately, it would give me this much on each end in between. And this is much more cost effective. Of course, now I'm going to have to take my scissor and cut these apart. But to me, I would rather save the money because I'm actually using like Dymo brand. I know you can get like generic ones to put in there, but I don't know if they work as well. And I don't ever want to like risk a machine kind of thing. It's one of those like, are you saving money if you break the machine from them? But you know, your mileage may vary. If you had great luck with them, that is awesome. You go for it. Because there are definitely things in life where I will use the generic one because I know they're the same. Okay, so then I will cut them apart. I will take the backing off, place it in the top right-hand corner as previously mentioned. Then, you know, that's sticky back. In theory, that should last forever. But in my experience as a teacher, things that are handled a lot, especially when you are adhering them to something slippery like plastic, they tend to come off over time. And I don't ever want to have to redo this. I want to be one and done. So I'm taking some Scotch tape, and after I place the label down, I am placing my Scotch tape over it, and then that's also clear. It's not maybe quite as nice looking, perhaps, just like when I cut them with my scissors. Sometimes I don't cut exactly straight. I'm not super worried about that. For me, this is mostly so they look good from a distance, and so that they are easy to read and use. Another thing that I wanted to mention is that these sort of standard weight job ticket holders hold about 25 sheets of 100 to 110 pound cardstock before you're starting to test their limits and possibly risking ripping them. So about 25 sheets of really thick cardstock. I also will abbreviate the name of the company. So like this is Hero Arts Coral, so I'll just put HA, or this is My Favorite Things Candied Yam, so I just put MFT. And that also saves just a little bit in your label maker. If they have a little sheet like this that tells you the name, you could of course just leave that and not put the label, but I like to be able to tell without fully taking it out of the magazine holder. So that's why I also place it in the corners. If you found this video inspiring, here's another video where you can find more ideas for enjoying your crafty time and supplies. Try to leave an organization type video up there if you enjoyed this one. Let me know that you liked this video with a share to your crafty community, subscribe and click the bell so you don't miss the next template or tutorial, and check the video description for product links. See you in the next video!